call the Capitola City Council meeting for March 24th to order. Can we begin with a roll call?
Council members Norton.
Here.
Harlan.
Here.
Bertrand.
Here.
Termini.
Here.
And Mayor Botter.
Here. Can we stand for a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight we're going to begin with a presentation for the proclamation and the observance of the American Red Cross Month. Do we have a representative from the Red Cross here tonight?
It can be.
No representative from the Red Cross?
I am the chair of the Red Cross. I will take it.
We'll come up and we'll make a presentation. This will be a first for me. So this is a great proclamation, and I'm going to read it because there's some good things in here, and I know you enjoy that, so we'll enjoy this. This is honoring American Red Cross Month for 2016, whereas the American Red Cross Month is a special time to recognize and thank everyday heroes, those who reach out and help our community. The American Red Cross helps heroes and disaster victims recover. They give blood to help the hospital patients. They brighten the day of an injured service member. They step forward to help someone having a heart attack. We would like to remember our heroes here in Capitola who help people in need. They work tirelessly to assist their neighbors when they need a helping hand. And whereas across the country and around the world, the American Red Cross responds to disasters. When an injured service member ended up in a hospital far from home, the American Red Cross offered comfort. When a hospital patient needed blood, the American Red Cross blood donors helped him. When a lifeguard jumped in to save a drowning child or someone stepped up to help a heart attack victim, the Red Cross was there. So we would like to dedicate the month of March to those who support the American Red Cross. And I know you are what's your role on the Red Cross?
I am the chairman of the board of the Santa Cruz County Red Cross.
So I would like to present this to you, and I know you will get them to them right away. And tell us about, there's an event coming up, and we have National or Red Cross Heroes Breakfast coming up.
We have a Heroes Breakfast coming up. I wish I had the date in my head. I know it's in May. We've picked 11 heroes in the county. And we'll be celebrating the Heroes Breakfast, I believe, at the Coconut Grove, but I'm not certain. I just came from a meeting and then came to here, so a lot of dates in my head. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a few other things the Red Cross does. Having had a son in the service, if you need to get a hold of one of your children and they're on a battlefield somewhere, I don't know how we do it, we get them. And we get a letter to them, we get a letter from them, and I can't believe you can tell you what that means when you can communicate with your child in harm's way, just with one phone call. The Red Cross has had a little negative press recently, and I can tell you for a fact that 91 cents of every dollar you contribute to the Red Cross goes to giving relief, period. We have a very small overhead. The Santa Cruz County Red Cross, a little known fact, of all the Red Cross chapters across the country, no one deploys as many volunteers as our little chapter. That means when Hurricane Katrina decimated New Orleans, there were more people there from Santa Cruz helping than from any single chapter anywhere in the country. That is astounding. The Red Cross also has a very robust relationship with the Red Crescent, which is the Middle Eastern counterpart to the Red Cross, and I can tell you I've seen pictures from disasters overseas where the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, you cannot tell them apart for what's happening for relief. They are together, shoulder to shoulder, doing the work. All religious or nationality differences fall by the wayside. It is a beautiful thing. I wish the world worked like the Red Cross did. Thank you.
That's good to know, and keep the Red Cross in mind when you get ready to donate, because it's obvious they do good things for our entire county. So thank you for being
here. We ask for your time, we ask for your money, and we ask for your blood.
There we go. The big three. Okay, next we have a presentation by Rosemary Menard of the Santa Cruz Water Director. Rosemary, thanks for coming and enlightening us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Mayor and Council members. The last time I was here, I think we were about to go into rationing in the first year. And I didn't get to come and tell you the bad news again the second year, but this year I'm here to tell you several good things about what's been going on with water in Santa Cruz, including we're in much better shape this year. Thank God for the rain. The rain gods in March have been particularly helpful to us. And I did want to come and follow up on the work of the Water Supply Advisory Committee, which worked for about a year and a half, finished their work about 6 months ago. But they laid out a plan for our area to get water security. And as Capitola, part of your city, is our customer, we wanted to tell you about it and see if you had any questions. So I have a relatively brief slideshow. I'll be happy to take your questions as we go along or anytime during, after the presentation. So just for a little bit of background and context, as you know, the City Council declared in 2013 in October to sort of reestablish a citizens committee to look at a way to assess the various alternatives and come up with a data-driven decision about what the city ought to do to improve the water supply situation for our city customers and our non-city customers. And in the November of 13, they adopted a sort of a charge and a sense of what this direction was. And then in February of 2014, they appointed a 14-member committee that was very diverse, had lots of different interests, city interests, environmental interests, pro-desal, anti-desal. It was quite a diverse group. And that group got to work in October of 2014 and worked until April of 2014 and worked until October of 2015. And they actually, this group decided at their very first meeting in April of 14 to operate by consensus, and they achieved a consensus recommendation. 14 people agreed to the plan. Just a couple of sort of background issues about what the kind of work that we did. And, of course, we will integrate this work into our urban water management plan, which we're in the process of updating right now. But I think a couple of things are really important. One is that our demand forecast is basically flat going forward in the future. And you might ask, well, how do we do that, especially if the area is growing? And there's several ways that that's happening. One is we have pretty aggressive plumbing and building codes that have been adopted by the state that are driving more efficiencies in the way new facilities are being constructed, and also will begin to affect how people have to replace aging fixtures in the future. So that is a huge contributor to the flattening out of demand historically. Another thing is we recognize that the price of water is going up and that people are having a price response to that and using less of it and changing their habits and, re-landscaping their yards and what have you. And so that's also affecting the amount of demand growth we see in the future. And then the third thing really is that we have a pretty aggressive conservation program, and any of our water customers have opportunity to receive a number of rebates and opportunities for education information. And so that program, along with the current program and the extended program, which we're going to be taking to our city council here shortly, are really a big part of flattening out demand. This demand forecast recognizes we'll have about a 13% increase in population during that period of 20 years going forward, and still flat. Our key challenges in terms of the water supply problem in our area are that we have limited storage. Loch Lomond just isn't big enough to get us through a couple of dry years in a row. We're going to be making commitments, long-term commitments to restore fishery populations, both the steelhead and coho salmon. We're anticipating some changes in the way that we get precipitation patterns, possibly temperature changes in terms of climate change that may affect how much demand we have and how much supply we have. And we also have a potential for seawater intrusion into our groundwater aquifers, which I'm sure you're aware of. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act at the very end, talk a little bit about that. When we look at our worst year gap and we provide flows that the Department of Fish and Wildlife is interested in having for our system, we're seeing a 1.2 billion gallon gap if we had the worst year flows, which are 1977. 2014 wasn't as bad, but it was close. And so we know, for example, and the Water Commission, I think, the Water Supply Advisory Committee came to these conclusions that with limited storage, with the requirements for fish flows and the potential for climate change, this is the gap, and we know that water conservation alone is not going to solve that problem. So I think in terms of the sort of understanding, community understanding of this problem, and that conservation alone is not the solution, we made a big leap in this particular process we just completed. And the recommendations come in three basic clumps. One is continued and increased water conservation. We're going to be increasing our rebates for things like landscape retrofit and replacement. We're going to be increasing rebates for things like washing machines and other kinds of efficient projects, facilities in your home. And I think all of this kind of stuff is available to all of our customers. So if you know anyone who needs those kinds of improvements or interested, please do direct them in our direction, and we will be working to, work with them to give them what they need. A major result of the work that we did is a recognition that we have a lot of water in the San Lorenzo River that could be stored or used in some fashion to help us if we could only find a place to put it. And so we've looked at a couple of strategies to harvest that winter flow and to either supply it to our neighbors like Soquel Creek or Scotts Valley Water District during the winter time so they can take their wells offline and rest them. That's called in lieu supply, and or aquifer storage and recovery, which is actually capturing that water, treating it, and then putting it in the ground and building storage that we can access when we have a dry year conditions and our reservoirs aren't filling, but also that helps to restore the regional groundwater. So that was a major kind of emphasis of the Water Supply Advisory Committee's recommendation, is to recognize that there's a real opportunity here to use this available surface water when it is available to help not only build storage for the city, but also to restore groundwater basins, which is a really important issue. I think just a note that in the two storms we got earlier this month, we got more water delivered in those two storms than we had in all of 2014. So you can see that there's a kind of a feast or famine situation, and that the San Lorenzo River, when we're getting normal rainfall, can be extremely productive. I think the strategies, the key thing with this particular strategy is that there are a number of uncertainties about this strategy. Can we get the water in the ground? Will it be there when we want to get it back? How do other jurisdictions feel about partnering with us? These are all strategies we're working on as we begin to implement this plan. And then because of the uncertainties of the groundwater augmentation strategies and the groundwater storage strategies, we are looking at some supplemental supply opportunities, both advanced treated recycled water, which I know you know some things about because you've had a presentation about that from Bruce Daniels a few months ago, and also backup is a desal plant. So these are really the other choices that we have locally in the event that we can't make or can't fully make the other groundwater augmentation strategies work. I gave you a bigger version of this particular document because it's sort of hard to see this one. But I think that it's really important to look at this in terms of this sort of 5-year window that we're talking about between now and about 2020. The plan that the Water Supply Advisory Committee authorized us to take forward to the Council includes a number of studies and evaluations of some of these concepts that were developed and we didn't have the time during the process we worked to fully technically evaluate them and consider all the, nuances of some of these choices. So really that work is happening during this first 5 years. At the end of 5 years, in 2020, we would expect to be making a decision about which one or more than one of these strategies we would be pursuing, potential portfolio, this one can do this so much and this one can do so much, and then be able to get to water supply security for our region by 2025. That's the goal, and the idea is get as much as we can get from the groundwater strategies, and then develop in collaboration with other partners, what have you, any of the additional strategies, the recycle strategy, if needed, the other strategies. So I think that the main other issue that is not in here, but I want to just mention, is there was quite a long discussion during the process that the committee did about why the groundwater strategies are preferred. And obviously, it makes good use of resources we already have. That's available water and winter water. The idea that it would contribute to the regional restoration of aquifers, it was really attractive to this group of people. It feels like to them that it was an effective way to get seawater intrusion under control, potentially by using the available water to get into the ground, or to take Soquel Creek in particular off its wells during the wintertime. And we do have an agreement with them to sell them water. We weren't able to implement that agreement this year, but we learned a lot in the planning work, and we will be ready to do it next year, and we're all set up. The CEQA process is finished. The analysis that they needed to do on their side of the system is finished, and they're going to be implementing the steps they need to take so that come next winter we'll be able to sell them water to begin this process. We know that there's a lot of flexibility in this. There's siting of these wells that you can do it in flexible places to help, particular problems. And so that's one of the things that where you have a greater depression, we could potentially put a aquifer storage and recovery well there. And over time, in the years that we don't need to take water out because we're not having drought conditions in Santa Cruz, that water can build and can start to contribute to the restoration of the aquifer. So I think that this strategy was thought through pretty well, and I think we're embracing it and really trying to move forward with it. And I think the other thing that's going on, and this is where I want to bring up the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. I gave you a flyer that talks about the act and what it generally does. The map at the bottom is the recently developed what's called the Mid-County Santa Cruz Groundwater Basin, Santa Cruz Mid-County Groundwater Basin, that has been submitted to the state. It's a revised boundary for an area that would be managed by a thing called the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. The Joint Powers Agreement for the creation of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency for this area has recently been completed, and in fact the new agency had its first meeting last Thursday night in your other conference room right over there. And so it includes 2 reps from Santa Cruz City, 2 reps from Santa Cruz County, 2 reps from Soquel Creek Water District, and 2 reps from the Central Water District. It's a joint powers authority that is fully functional, but its first task and what it's going to be doing over the next couple of years is to create a groundwater sustainability plan for the Santa Cruz Mid-County Groundwater Basin. One of the things that we need to be doing as we work to develop the plan is to engage stakeholders of all sorts, and obviously the City of Capitola is a very important stakeholder in this process. So we wanted to make sure that you were aware of what was going on here, and if you have questions, any follow-up, or want to know more about this, there's a website listing there, or you can feel free to give me a call, and I'll be happy to try to answer your questions or direct you where someone else can answer them. So with that, I will take your questions, and again, thank you for having me to speak.
Thanks, Rosemary. Any questions for Rosemary? Stephanie?
The pipeline already exists between your system and Soquel Creek's.
We have an intertie with the Soquel Creek Water District at the O'Neill Ranch facility. We actually have a couple of additional interties down here, kind of more in your city. One at Jewel, I think, and another, or Garnet, and another one, I forget the other one.
Where the well is?
They're further down here. They're just interties. They're emergency interties that have existed. But when the O'Neill well was finished, there was an intertie actually put into place there, and we have used that intertie in a couple of times just in the last year. When we took our Ocean Street trunk main out of service last September to replace some broken valves on that service, we used some water coming in from the Soquel system to help us meet demand during the time that we actually had our treatment plant shut down for the first time ever. So that's a process. We can provide about 1.5 million gallons a day through that intertie into the Soquel Creek system.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Dennis?
You know, Bruce Daniels did come and speak to us also.
Right.
You know, this drought isn't new to this county. It's been going on for a number of years, and we really, both water districts have really not done a whole lot. We've studied a lot of different issues and looked at different problems that are out there, but we've seen no action yet. Is there a time when we're going to see action about either increased surface storage or groundwater injection?
Right.
Is this going to come? I mean, so far, we haven't seen anything from Santa Cruz Water District or Soquel in taking any action on this.
So I do recognize the frustration and the concern. I mean, a lot of the conversation we had during the Water Supply Advisory Committee process had to do with the fact that this problem has come up and has been being studied, and, you know, an initiative gets put forward and it gets shot down, but it really for 40, 50 years. So you're right, it's not new. I think that one of Santa Cruz's strategies in creating this committee and asking it to do the work that it did was to build community support for an action plan that would, in fact, begin to address the problem. And I will say that a lot of what the recommendations are shaped by sort of a pragmatic approach of what can get done. So the work that's going to happen over the next 5 years as we study and refine and get things to the place where we know what we can build is sort of backed up on the other side by, and at 5 years, whatever the results of those analyses are, we are going to build something so that by 10 years out, we are able to say we've solved this problem. And, you know, I wouldn't be wise if I said absolutely it's going to happen, but I think the goal was, and the intent of a lot of the parties was to say we do need to do something, and here's a plan that we think we can make work.
Well, you know, Soquel District and Santa Cruz District have two different problems.
Yes.
They don't share the same problem. You have plenty of
Yes.
surface storage. We have no surface storage.
Right.
We rely completely on the aquifer, Union aquifer. So it's nice that there's a joint discussion about the whole problem, and the idea of sharing is certainly an idea. We have this discussion about groundwater injection, and one of the places that has been discussed is along the Union Pacific corridor. Yeah, we're in the process in the city of Santa Cruz in the process of building a trail along that whole corridor before we get anything in the ground. So if that's going to be used, it's got to be done quickly. Somebody's got to make a decision and move towards getting groundwater injection along this corridor wherever it's needed if they're going to use it. Because we don't have any place within the county except for our freeway that you can actually run a parallel pipeline through without purchase of property.
So I know that because of the project that Soquel is interested in, the recycled water project, there's a proposal for a pipe that would bring water back from the wastewater plant that would then be treated more fully and injected into the groundwater. For the purposes of what we're looking at, we're probably not, we wouldn't put the water that we want to store in that pipeline right of way. And in part because I'm not sure that the aquifer conditions along that area would be suitable for the kind of volume of water. And the second part is for us, getting it out and getting it back into our system from that little narrow strip is probably not going to work for us. So we're looking at some, particularly in Scotts Valley and the Lampico, Santa Margarita aquifers, we're looking for some areas there that might be quite useful for putting a lot of water in the ground and being able to capture that then and bring it back into our system using gravity flow coming back. We are looking, I think, at the opportunities in the Purisima aquifer, which is the one we share with Soquel Creek, but it's really, this Purisima is a much more complicated aquifer to, you know, think about how you're going to get the water in and how you're going to get the water out. Probably the in-lieu strategy is the best strategy that we could really be pursuing with Soquel and seeing how we could help to rebuild the storage in the groundwater by taking them off their wells during the wintertime and letting those you know, the groundwater table sort of recover some. So it's not really a one-size-fits-all strategy, and I think we're all exploring, the options to try to find ways to make the best decisions given the directions we're all pursuing and to, solve the problem.
Thank you for the explanation.
Michael? John? Well, Rosemary, just a couple things. A couple simple questions for you, just so we can make an announcement. How full is the reservoir right now?
The reservoir is spilling right now.
Okay, so that's, I don't know how long since we've been able to say that, but probably quite
A week ago last Sunday.
I mean, years. Okay, so that's good news. And
2013.
Yeah, I think that takes the pressure off what everybody's feeling. Daniels has come and spoke to us, and I just want to recognize that, this is not an easy problem. I know that we probably, when I say we, the county, because it's a countywide problem, we struggled for many years on whether we were going to do desalinization or not, and wasted a lot of time and money on that effort. And then also, Bruce has got us believing that, it's a lot harder to recharge the aquifers than it is to take the water out. So I know that that's a challenge. A question for you. I know there was some work going on trying to secure water from Scotts Valley to Water Pasatiempo. Did that connection ever come about, or is that?
The Pasatiempo Golf Course is, in fact, working on building a plant that will take secondary treated wastewater off of the pipeline that runs from the wastewater plant down to the city's outfall. And taking that water out, they will further treat it to tertiary on their site and store it. And we anticipate that by 2017, about 80% of their demand will be on recycled water, tertiary treated wastewater.
Great. And I guess the best thing is just to see what comes down the pipe. I know that the results of the committee was good results. It seems like when you said everybody was finally in agreement.
Right.
And I know that this is a process. When you say 5 years, I'm optimistic. But it doesn't hurt the fact that it rains and fills the reservoirs and we see water again. So thanks for the presentation. Let me just see if there's anybody from the public that would like to ask Water Director of Santa Cruz any questions. Sure. Come on up.
Hi, thank you, and good evening. My name is Becky Steinbrunner. I want to thank Ms. Menard for that great presentation. I was actually at the meeting last Thursday as well, and have been following this process mostly through Soquel Creek Water District. I am a customer of a small water company, Pure Source Water Company up in the hills in Aptos, and I'm really glad that the Mid-County Groundwater Sustainable Committee includes 3 private well owners on that. They can't vote right now until the bylaws are enacted because of the financial constraints, but those 3 positions also represent the small water companies, and there are a number of them around. So I just want to point out to your board that I have a lot of concerns about, as you said, Mr. Norton, about the state of the aquifers and progress for repairing and resolving the seawater intrusion. The Purisma Aquifer has been in overdraft since 1980, and we are long overdue to take action. I have been asking the Soquel Creek Water District Board for many months now to please consider something like a moratorium. They have no more water demand offsets available to give to new people coming in asking for service. And it's a problem for them because people get building or go to apply for building permits, for example, with the city of Capitola or the county of Santa Cruz. And people are led to believe that they can build, and they get heavily invested in energy and money-wise into that process, and then they have to go get their will-serve letter for water. And it becomes very difficult for the water agency to say no. They run the risk of a lawsuit. And so they keep handing out these will-serve connections, and at last meeting there was one for 8 condominiums. And I know that the water efficiency is getting much better with all of the appliances, but it's still, the account is on overdraft, and you can't keep writing checks. So I also want to point out that according to the Soquel District's consultant, you cannot store water in the Prisma aquifer. As Ms. Menard said, it's a much more complicated aquifer. You can't put it in and expect that you're going to take it out like you can in the Santa Margarita aquifer in Scotts Valley. It's not going to work. You can put it in and help keep the seawater intrusion at bay, but you can't really put water in the bank, as is often said with the water demand offset program. So I encourage you. I also have a lot of concerns, as many residents do, about the contaminants of emergent concern with the advanced water treatment plan. There are pharmaceuticals and hormone interrupters for which there are no tests available. So I would like to ask your caution in that, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak here.
Thank you for your comments, Becky. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to ask any questions of the Water Director? Okay, great. Rosemary, thank you very much for coming and sharing that information. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, we'll move on to a report on closed session.
Yes. Mayor Bottorff, members of the City Council, there was one item on this evening's closed session, an item of real property negotiations involving the property at 2091 Wharf Road, owned by Joseph and Debbie Genge. There was no reportable action on that item.
And Liz, is there any additional materials tonight?
Yes, we had 2 emails regarding item 10C and 2 emails received regarding item 11B.
Great, thank you. And Mr. City Manager, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Staff has no changes.
Great. With that, we'll move on to public comments. This is a part of the meeting where we open it up to the public to allow you 3 minutes to talk on any item that is not on the agenda. So please come up and tell us your name and sign in and tell us what city you live in.
Ben? Thank you. Actually, I'm in the rural area, up the old San Jose Road, so I'm not quite in a city.
Okay.
My name is Lowell Webb. I'll write it in here when I finish.
Okay.
The reason I came tonight was to say, hey, thank you very, very much for your consideration and your elimination of that evil cell tower. Maybe I shouldn't use such words, but that's what we feel they are at the Begonia Plaza. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The other thing that came to mind, and this is a little on the agenda, so I hope I'm not in too much trouble, the Red Cross thing, wonderful. As a recipient of Red Cross hospitality in the 50s in Korea, with the donut dollies coming out to cheer the guys up and what have you, I appreciate that very much. And as a donor of over 20 gallons of blood, again, I appreciate what you do. Thank you.
And Lowell, those are good comments. You can make those. Thank you.
All right. Name is on there. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks for taking care of water as best you can.
Well, sir.
Hi, my name is Dave Kramer-Erner. I'm actually a resident of the city of Santa Cruz over on the west side, but I'm an employee of the county of Santa Cruz, and I'm here to say good evening to the mayor and city council members. I'm the supervising therapist with the County of Santa Cruz's California Children's Services Medical Therapy Program. And I'm here to talk about National Public Health Week that's coming up, April 4th through April 10th. This year's theme is The Healthiest Nation in One Generation. This week, during that week, we're going to celebrate the many achievements of public health and remind the community what public health's mission is: to prevent disease, promote healthy choices, and to protect the health of all residents. I'd like to start by acknowledging you for recognizing that health is not just something that occurs at a doctor's office or a hospital, but rather health can be found in everyday decisions made by this council and can be found in existing practices and policies, such as your recent efforts to protect local residents and visitors by expanding your secondhand smoke protections to cover more areas throughout the city and to include vapes and electronic cigarettes as well. I'd also like to recognize the city's climate action plan and to note that there's an upcoming town hall meeting with information on substance abuse as a treatable disease, which will include a talk by Police Chief Rudy Escalante. So thank you for demonstrating that everyday decisions within the city can and should promote health, and I'd just like to present the the council with a certificate.
Give that to the treasurer, Dave. Thank you.
Good. Activities of National Public Health Week are going to include a focused art exhibit, movie night, a medical therapy unit open house, and an STD HIV review for educators. And in coming weeks, you can follow our activities on Facebook and Twitter pages, Public Health SCC, and go to our website at www.santacruzhealth.org/NPHW. And you can join the movement to create the healthiest nation in one generation. Thanks again for the opportunity to remind everyone what a difference public health makes in all our lives.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
You can have it.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Bush. I work in Capitola, though I live in South County, Watsonville. And I appreciate the Health Awareness Week, and I think that's a great idea. Considering health and safety should be our utmost concern. And one of the areas that this should be applied to is the consideration of all the technology that's out there, specifically the wireless communication that's on the cell towers, smart meters, distributed antenna sitters, microwave units, microcell units. I would like to see more of a consideration of health and safety when considering this. The evidence is out there, the science is very clear that this is a danger to all life, plants, animals, bees, humans, the young, the old, and it should be our utmost concern. And I'd like to see a little bit more commitment in that. I know the way the federal laws are written, that they prevent us from considering health and environmental effects. But I just want to stress this cannot be overlooked regardless of the federal laws that are in place, because our utmost responsibility is to protect our own community here and our safety. And I do want to commend you for making the decision, recent decision on opposing the Begonia Plaza cell tower. I think that the community, they did not want it, and you listened to us, and you voted it down. I would love to see more of that. It gives us hope. There's many people here that have been fighting for that for a while, and it's just nice to see some headway after years and years of effort on that. I'd also like to remind people that that is something that's not going to go away. Verizon and the telecom companies have profits at stake, and they're extremely powerful and have lobbyists and special interest groups that push their agenda on a federal, state, and local level. And they are aggressively deploying this technology, and it's something that we all have to be continually vigilant about, because they could threaten a lawsuit at any time, and with this recent decision. So we'll see what takes place there. I know each of you had your own reasons for denying it, but in any case, that's all I have to say, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Barbara.
Hi.
Hey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
My name is Kari Sid, and I am the owner of the Capitola Hotel, 7 long months. And
Congratulations.
I think so. We'll see. This is my first time at a city council meeting, so I appreciate your understanding. I'm a little nervous. I'm here to talk to you about my maybe a request about the in lieu parking program. So,
Sorry. I know it's your first meeting, but this part of the meeting is for people to talk about things that are not on our agenda. Since the item you want to talk about is on the agenda, it's item B, We're going to get to that, and then you can come up and
Oh,
talk
so I
during
don't
that.
have to write my name up here.
Well, you do when you come up then, but we limit it to only things right now that aren't on the agenda. This is a chance, like, if you want to talk about having dogs on the beach, you could come up and talk about it.
Bring that up. Don't remember, think about
but-
it. Okay, I apologize.
No, I don't want you to go-
I looked over the agenda like 10 times. I couldn't
No,
find it, but
I
I
don't
will
want you
go
to-
and wait.
I don't want you to go away. I want you to come back in about 10 minutes.
I will,
Okay,
thanks.
okay, thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
2 hours in the meeting.
I think citizen participation in government is great whenever it comes.
Wonderful. Welcome back, Dick.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Becky Steinbruner, and I want to echo the gratitude that Mr. Webb and Ms. Bush expressed earlier to your board for upholding your ordinances regarding setback on the cell phone tower at Begonia Plaza at your last meeting. I want to commend you because, especially with the coffers of all governments being very tight, it's often very easy to give exceptions to developers and allow things to happen that are profitable for the government and for the developer, but are not in the spirit or the intention of the resolutions and the ordinances that were passed to protect the people and the characters of our neighborhood. So I really want to thank you for being strong and denying that request. I also want to bring to your attention that there is a bill, AB 57, that was signed by the governor in 2015 that restricts cell phone tower placements on fire stations, because throughout the state of California there has been great concern among firefighters regarding health effects with cell phone towers put on their stations. So again, thank you very much for your strength and courage to look out for your people and the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And is there anyone else that would like to speak to us about something that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period, and we'll move on to City Council, Treasurer, staff comments. And at this time also, if you have any comments about commissions that you sit on, feel free to comment on those.
Okay, I'll start. I have nothing from committees, although we did meet at the Finance Advisory Committee, but I'll let the treasurer speak to that. At 11 o'clock, this is very, very important, very serious government business. 11 o'clock this Saturday is the Easter egg hunt, where thousands of eggs disappear in about 30 seconds, thanks to 1,000 children getting them out of the sand in record time. The famous Capitola Easter Bunny will be there. Right after the Easter egg hunt, at noon, the library will be holding its Sweet 16 birthday party at the Capitola Library branch, where there'll be refreshments, and what a surprise, the book bunny will be there, who looks a lot like the bunny who's at the Easter egg hunt, but
different hat?
Different, no, same hat. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. John?
I'm a little confused. So we just general comments?
You can do general comments, or you can do both.
Okay, I'll do both. Okay, so I went to the Inside Ed. I'm part of that. It's sort of like a leadership group, but it's focused on educational issues. And went to a couple of institutions. I'll just talk about one. One was the, and this is for the county educational department. It's a Phoenix Academy, and it's a school for adolescent males aged 7 to 10 who benefit from structured learning environment. And I have to admit, I was totally impressed. We were allowed to go into various classrooms and sit down with the students there, and just very much at ease and interacting with the students. And they actually included me in some of their discussions. It was a report that they were doing together. I was totally amazed. So I think the county is doing great things for education, and this is one of them. Also started the Focus Agriculture program, which is also proving to be very interesting. Learned a little bit about the history of agriculture in this area, and went to some very interesting farms, learned about flower growth, berries, amongst other things. But the main takeaway I have is that these guys that are running the farms, they are really, in one way, struggling and trying to come up with very interesting ways to do what they totally believe in, which is being farmers under some very adverse circumstances. So these guys are doing amazing things, and it comes to our stores, and we purchase it, and we don't even think about it. This week, I also went to the 13th Annual Water Conservation Showcase put on by PG&E in San Francisco. Learned a lot about water conservation, and almost every single booth I went to, God, I said, I bet Steve Jesberg would love to hear about this. So I told Steve about it yesterday, and he says, I never pick. So we had a little laugh about that. But there's a couple of good ideas there that I thought were really neat. I'll let you talk about the Breakfast Club because that's on your tacket. So I'm also part of the Climate Action Collaborative, which is forming from this part of the coast all the way down to San Luis Obispo, and with on a couple of committees there. So I met twice on that in the last 2 weeks, and I had a great time. I went to the Boys and Girls Club opening in Live Oak, and again, I'm just thrilled to see things like this come out of this area with so many different people making this happen. I think 7 years in the making, probably being planned a lot further back than that, but the main thing is a lot of kids just running around having a good time. So naturally, I talked to a lot of people, and I found this one mother just sort of watching her kid enjoying herself, and so I went up to her because she was not really doing anything except watching her kid, which was beautiful. And I said, do you really feel comfortable leaving your kid here after school and stuff like that? And she says, totally. This is a great environment for kids, and I feel totally, just at ease about this. So I think this institution is going to have a bright future. Stephanie and I went to a recent dinner, talked about infrastructure funding on stormwater. Had a couple of meetings on economic development, sort of informal ones. Ed's going to talk about that a little bit. Also, the representative on the Hazardous Waste Advisory Committee, and the county is now starting to work out an arrangement with the private industry to recycle medicine and sharps. So right now, the county's been doing that and paying the fee to, run the program, and we're going to reverse it. So the pharmaceutical company has actually put together a proposal that we've been working with, and I think, Tony, there's going to be an ordinance that we might be dealing with pretty soon, right? Okay, because the county, this is a county program, but we want to have continuity between the county and the cities, so that's probably going to come before us. Finance and value, we already talked about that. Oh, I went to Children's Network. Children's Network voted unanimously to support the library tax proposal, so that was nice to hear. Thanks.
Dennis.
Yes, I'd like to make conversation to our mayor. And he sits as a representative on the Santa Cruz Metro base, and I'm told that you're meeting tomorrow, which will discuss a $6 million deficit. And I just have a little plea for Capitola here, is that we pay a huge percentage of sales tax into that system that finances it, and we've never really gotten full service here, as is Aptos area. But every time there's a cut, it seems like it's our lines in this area, they get removed. And so I'd just like you to hopefully enforce keeping the few lines that we have here. And, UCSC contributes personally to the end of that fund, but they don't pay the full freight. So they get almost 50% of the service in this district. And so if there's anything that needs to be shortfall, it needs to be taken. People in the urban areas like Capitola and Aptos need to have some type of alternative services that the Metro provides, and maybe you can respond about that.
I'll give a little update when it gets to
okay,
me. I was
great.
going to make
Thank
that
you.
announcement.
That's all.
Thanks for asking.
Just wanted to encourage people to come to the museum. There's a new show. It's wonderful. They're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday from noon to 4. As your representative on the sanitation district and as the chair, I have never visited the wastewater treatment facility in Santa Cruz where we send all of our wastewater. I've been to the one in Watsonville. So I took a tour along with many staff members today, and it was very, very interesting. I came back with this brochure for all of you to share. Very impressive facility, very well run. They have a cogeneration facility there. They take the energy that's used here to power this. They take the water that's used for that to cool this, the steam to power that. It's a complete loop system that's very impressive, very, very interesting. So if any of you are interested in going sometime, you're more than welcome to. They also take a lot of school groups because they want the kids to understand what the situation is. And we really have to do a better job of educating people. Don't flush stuff down the toilet because that, the biggest pile of stuff there that what it went through that wasn't supposed to be there were baby wipes. Piles of them. And on the package it says flushable. We can't get the manufacturers to take it off the packages. So we got to work on that. So I'll work on that a little bit this year. But anyway, it's a very, very impressive, wonderful organization and operation, and they're just doing a really good job. I just highly commend them. So that's all.
Okay, great. Well, I'll start with the good and exciting news. I was joined by Vice Mayor Stephanie Harlan today, and we served 31 lunches at the Live Oak Senior Center to 31 seniors. And it was a good time to engage with the community and the seniors and to see some of the money that the City of Capitola contributes to that organization. Community Bridges and Meals on Wheels is well spent, and it's a great service, so that was a good day. With regards to Metro, Metro's in a seriously bad situation right now. They have about a $6.5 million shortfall. And to a city, an agency, a fire department, a police department, $6.5 million is a tremendous amount of money to be short in 1 year. And there is no simple way out of it. They've negotiated long-term contracts with the unions, the bus drivers, that actually gave back money. That helped a little bit. They've done everything they can, but the problem with running a business like the bus system, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, is bus systems do not make money. Bus systems live and thrive on federal and state funds, and they support the people in the community that are most at need. And the state funds, we're all aware that the price of gasoline is so incredibly low right now, and there's a tax associated to that. And the gas tax has not been raised in over 10 or 15 years, so the money that comes down the pipe to support systems like the bus has created this deficit. And although there's two parts of any business, there's the capital side that builds buildings and there's the side that pays for employees. That's called the operational side. That's where the cuts have to be made. And at tomorrow's meeting, we've hired an analyst to present us with the plan, but that plan will be made available tomorrow for the first time. And as Councilman Norton pointed out, there is going to be about 35% significant cuts to the entire bus system. And that number means nothing unless you actually look at the schedule. And what it plays out to is if a bus used to run every half hour between Santa Cruz and Watsonville, it'll probably run every hour. And some routes are going to be cut completely. The main bus route, the 91, I believe it is, that runs it's an express line from Santa Cruz to Watsonville, is completely being removed because it has a cost. And the cost of that, the cost savings, is about $2 million. So the good news, if there is such a thing for the City of Capitola, is, as Dennis mentioned, a few routes in Capitola have been cut and removed over the years. And because those cuts were already made, there's not a lot more significant cuts that hits Capitola because we are fortunate to be in the heart of the system. We're basically the trunk of the system, Santa Cruz and Aptos a little bit farther. But when you get into places like East Lake and Watsonville and Boulder Creek and Felton, there's a lot of people that will just no longer have bus service. And if that happens, if all the cuts go into play, that's going to be devastating to those communities. The one good thing that is being proposed out of the cuts is that there's a policy that exists in the Metro system that says that wherever the fixed route, let me rephrase this, the Paracruz can only run where the fixed route runs. So as long as a regular bus runs there, we can pick up the disabled, the handicapped that need the special treatment. The problem is a lot of the people that are disabled and handicapped are not in the higher income, and they live in areas where it's cheaper to live. So the policy is going to be changed, that the Cruz paratransit system will stay intact even though the bus lines are being cut. And if there is a silver lining, that is it. Trying to make up $6.5 million is no easy task. The funds from the state are, like I said, there's no federal money, there's no state money. I actually spent an hour today up at Cabrillo College. Dennis, you brought up UCSC, and just for the sake of the system, you know, if I mentioned to you that the bus system doesn't make money, it's not profitable, the only two buses in the entire system that fill the buses and generate revenue on a positive side are the buses that go to UCSC and the buses that go over Highway 17. Every other bus doesn't pay for itself. So we already raised the rates on the Highway 17, and there was just a minor amount of drop in the service. And with UCSC, because they are able to do so, we've cut their routes, and they are just going to buy back the routes. They have the ability just to generate money to pay for those routes. So they're just going to pay the flat hourly rate to restore the rates that are cut. So today we went to Cabrillo College because, I hope I get the numbers right here, I think they said, it was alarming to me, 18,000 students when you count full-time and other ones. And we're trying to get them to adopt a fee of $40 per student to kick $1 million into the fund to restore some of the routes through mid-county. So it's a pretty serious issue. There was some news coverage tonight, KSCO, I think, no, Phil Gomez. Yeah, but there's a story tonight about that. More to follow tomorrow. Tomorrow will be the big unveiling of that plan, and all I can say to you is I will be lobbying for the routes for Capitola. But the good news is that the preview of the cuts, Capitola was already running on some routes that had been removed, so we were not hit too significantly. So with that, we'll move on.
You know, they are known. The route cuts are known. I just happened to be at the bus station today picking up something, and somebody asked about the meeting tomorrow, and a lady handed him a piece of paper and said, these are the routes that are being proposed. Right. So come and see. It's
probably going to be a 2 or 3 month process before they're finally approved, adopted, and voted on, but yeah, it's not a good time for Santa Cruz Metro. Okay. City Treasurer comments.
Finance Advisory Committee meeting we had on Tuesday, and we're compiling a recommendation that we'll provide at closer to budget hearing time. So that's my only comment.
Great. Mr. City Manager, staff comments.
I think the first one is I would caution the council a little bit, I think, on Brown Act, on the updates from the boards. I think short updates are probably kosher. I just caution you on getting too far into the weeds on some of the topics that are in front of boards. But I think alerting board members to some of the issues that are pending on our boards and commissions is probably wise. I would just mention that I do sit on several boards and commissions on behalf of the city, 911 dispatch board. One of the things we're going to be looking at moving forward is a new CAD system. It's going to be a major new purchase, and it's going to be a multi-year process, but the computer-aided dispatch system up at 911 is a big project. Library district I sit on for the city, and we're looking for a new director. So that's going to be a real exciting process, and we're going to be doing interviews with some community panels coming up in April. I sit on the board for our work comp and liability insurance carrier, and just, you know, as has been the case the last several years, we're going to be seeing increases in our liability premiums due to the phasing in of the costs associated with the Pacific Cove claims. But the good news is the work comp claims budget's looking relatively solid, relatively good. That completes my report.
Can we get the Public Works Director to come up and give us a quick CIP update? I know there's construction going on in the city, so tell us about it, Steve.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Obviously, Stockton Avenue interchange improvements are underway. They poured the first area of concrete sidewalk today along Stockton Avenue. Next week, they will be moving around the Esplanade and doing the same section in front of that building along the Esplanade. Then they're going to hop from there over to Margaritaville and then back over on the other side of Stockton. We are looking at adding another portion to the project along Stockton Avenue by the David Ling Building. We're working on getting a price from them. That would be week 3 from now if we do add that. So we're kind of moving around. McGregor Park, we have completed the soil remediation there, and they should be paving the parking lot next week, and then we'll be putting in irrigation and landscaping, and then we're working closely with finishing that portion of the contract. Then we have 2 separate contractors who are building the skate park and the bike park. I'm meeting with the bike park people on Monday to see what their schedule is, and then the skate park, it looks like, will be toward the end of April when I get back in there. 38th Avenue, we have a start date of April 4th on that. They're going to do the concrete work. We need to reconstruct all the ADA ramps, curb ramps. We'll do that first, and then they'll come in and do the paving after that. And I think those are the ones that are active. We are out to bid on Rispin ADA Phase 2 and on the Rosedale paving project. So those will be coming in early April, start construction as we get closer to summer.
Great. Any questions? Mike?
First of all, who's the contractor doing Stockton?
Anderson Pacific.
Anderson Pacific, absolutely brilliant. I've never seen a project moving so fast in such a sure fashion. Thank you. Second, I know it's a little far afield, but what's the latest news on how long the county's going to be holding us up from doing Clare Street?
They haven't given me a date yet. I think they are still looking for funding for their project. We are actually looking right now if there's a way we can do a phased approach where we can go from like 42nd Avenue up to 41st, not from 46th to 41st. And then they would come in behind us and do not tear up our new project that way.
It will be a dirt road by the time they do their project. Yeah. We've been waiting more than 10 years to do this.
Well, okay.
And I know it's not your fault. It's just,
no.
The fact the county can hold up a road that's deteriorating to the point of being dangerous, perhaps we should send them a letter telling them they should be responsible for any damages that come down from any complaints or auto problems from going on that road, and it might inspire them, maybe not.
Councilman Chairman, the CIP committee has met, and we've had some discussions about rephasing that to do 41st to 46th, which pretty much does 85% of the roadway, all the improvements, all the bad sections, and just leaves that potential library corner for
who knows when.
Yeah, but I mean, it's something that we may be coming back to the council with to proceed on the Clares project, which would be a great improvement.
I ran across that road last night when I went out to deliver library notices to the people in the Kaufman and Broad homes, so they all know about it. They all got an invitation to the party next door to them.
Any other questions?
No questions, but I do have to say that up at McGregor, those guys were quite happy about the project. They were just very motivated, and a lot of kudos to Earthworks, right? I talked with them a bit, so it was very busy, very, very busy.
Moved a lot of dirt up there recently.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Steve. Okay, we're going to move to boards, commissions, and committee appointments. And we have, do you have a presentation on this?
Just very brief.
Introduction, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we received a letter from Congressman Farr's office here recently asking for an appointment of a representative as well as an alternate to a new committee that's going to be formed to help advise the FAA about some of the changes in flight path that we all know has affected us pretty significantly. So what Congressman Farr is looking for is a representative and an alternate, as I mentioned. We can be members of a select committee that would consist of representatives from our district and Ashley's district, and I think Congresswoman Spear as well from the multiple counties, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, and San Mateo counties. So with that, I know that Mayor Bottorff has attended one of the more recent meetings that we had with the FAA and has been engaged in this topic as well. So with that, turn it over.
Yeah, I've actually been on 2 meetings with the select committee so far, and I've had a couple meetings with Quiet Skies, Save Our Skies.
Okay, I went through the same thing the year before. I'm still in contact with those people. I would really like to complete that. You know, and this is my last year on the council, and I think by that time I do it. And by the way, those planes fly exactly over my house. They don't fly over Nels's house. You missed that. They go right over top of my house. And
how did Nels work that out?
Over the top of their house.
Yeah, like I said, I've actually had meetings at the House and with them, been working very diligently with the committee and reached out with Sam Farr's office to get that appointment, because it was,
okay.
I mean, I would like to remain in that, and if you would like to be an alternate, is there anyone else who would like to be as an alternate, or are we okay with?
I think you're two perfect choices.
Yep.
And if you want to make a motion for that.
I'll make a motion.
Representative.
And Dennis will be the
Second.
That's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Maybe you can't be allowed to vote since it flies right over your house. Maybe
You
you
should have some say in that.
No, I mean,
The planes are further than 300 feet.
oh, that's it. Okay, thank you. Okay, I just wanted to check that out.
Thanks for the clarification.
No conflict of interest there.
No conflict. Okay.
Okay, and we've already given an update on our commissions, and so we'll move on to the consent calendar. These are items that we normally take all in one motion. Is there anybody who would like to have an item pulled from the consent calendar?
Can I have a second? I just have a question about corporation.
On the check register?
Yes, I do. Just
Question
a
for
simple
the check
question.
register, one question.
And it's probably for Steve. So there was some grading in the corporation yard. Why are we paying for that? Isn't that a result of the work sanitation did up there?
Good evening once again. Yes, so we had an agreement with the county, who did a significant amount of work in the courtyard, to repave the entire work area up at the courtyard. When it came time to pave it, they gave us an opportunity to develop a plan so that we could improve the drainage and do the paving job right. And they said if we gave them a grading plan, that they would then build it to that, which was a little different than what we had in there before. So I took that opportunity, did develop a grading plan, and then they paid for all the work that was done. I thought that was a good trade for us at that point.
Thanks for that foresight. Thanks.
And I got another question, Steve. Sam? What is Kimberly Horn? What are we doing with the rail trail right now? What is the process with that?
So the rail trail, we have developed some alternatives, and I still need to get together with the RTC. We do have a plan that we want to propose to them and move forward on, and I hope to be going into the final design and environmental review with that in the next probably couple months.
And this is the segment between the old depot lot and the parking lot? Is
Yes,
that what
it
we're
is.
talking about?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is there anyone else has pulled any questions? Is there a motion for the?
Move approval of the consent calendar?
Second. Is there anyone from the public that would like to pull anything from the consent calendar? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That'll bring us to a general government public hearing, and the first item we have on the agenda is approve the Surfers Path event permit. Our police chief.
Good evening, Mayor, Council Member Rudy Escalante, your Chief of Police. What you have before you tonight is to review a special event permit request by an existing vendor within the city of Capitola that has run a couple of events each year successfully for the last couple of years. They would like to change one of their events and then add another event. Lifestyle Escapes, they coordinate two different events within the city of Capitola. One of them is the Surfers Path Marathon, Capitola Half Marathon, which is held in May. And that race begins in the city of Santa Cruz and then traverses down through the Capitola Village and back out along Cliff Drive. And then in November, they have the Surfers Path 10K, 5K race. And that starts in the unincorporated areas of Santa Cruz County and ends in Capitola Village. Now, both of these events are in our off-peak season. Staff is really being considerate in examining new event opportunities because of complaints and concerns we get from the public about event fatigue every year. Usually by September and October, the community is a little concerned about the traffic. But we also take into account how an event coordinator handles an event and how successful it is. Do they stay within the confines of their permit? Does it start and end on time? What impacts does it have on the community and the impacts that it has on staff? And so the applicant, who is here tonight, Mr. Tom Bradley, he would like to add a special event and move one. The one that he has in in November, he would like to move to February 26th. And the new event that he is proposing would take place on October 23rd. That would be the week or two after the fireworks. The Surfers Path Marathon would continue to stay in May where it is currently now. What the applicant does when they have their events, they do all the postings. They actually go and notify the businesses 3 weeks before the event and 3 days before the event. We have had good conversation with the applicant regarding making notice as much as possible so we don't have to tow any vehicles. The applicant actually does a really good job in getting that information out. We also assist in all of our social media efforts that we have in communication with our community members, notifying them of the events. The new event and the current events that they have will be done before 11 a.m. Most of the time they're usually done about 10:30, which means the Esplanade is fully open no later by 11 on those days of the events. There's no alcohol that's associated with these events, and they use Esplanade Park as an area for sales of T-shirts and other things that they are involved in, giving of water and food bars and that sort of thing at the end of the race. And so based on the applicant's past history with us and the success of the events that they currently run twice a year, and the fact that the new event would move another event to the off-season, staff would recommend that we would approve the event. And if you have any questions for staff, we are available. And as I mentioned, the applicant is here for any questions that you might have as well. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilman Turmey.
Chief, I know that Tom does not organize the Mini Mermaid event. That's a different.
That's correct.
But they have had concerns during that event that more than just a small amount of food is distributed, and the restaurants are all saying, thanks for bringing 10,000 people. Too bad they fed them all, too. And I know Tom is an incredible organizer. His races always go off cleanly. Mm-hmm. And from what I've seen, it's pretty much power bars and water. And that's pretty much what we're talking about here, correct?
That's correct, and that is listed in the application.
Great, thank you.
Questions? So just for clarification, in this year there'd be an event in May and October? It's going to move the one from November to October?
We'd move the one from November to February, and there would still be one in May and October.
May and October, and then next year there would be one in February, May, and October?
Yes.
I wrote down, good. All right. Is there any questions? Anyone from the public would like to speak on this? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back for discussion.
I'll move for approval, as recommended by staff.
I'll second, but under discussion.
Sure.
I think for no other reason than just for form, we are, and I am the king of partying in Capitola, okay? As your representative of the Art and Cultural Commission, guilty as charged. We have to start being very careful because we are getting activitied out. You know, we're getting festival fatigue, as they call it. And I know this race is very benign. It's very small. They clean up well. They're in, they're out. Can't say enough good things about Tom and the way he does the event. But it would note in the minutes that we have concerns as a council to be very, very cautious with bringing new events into the village. That's all.
I'm really not interested in adding any more after this. I wasn't really interested in adding any more, but willing to do this one, but I would really look hard at anything else because of that. And when we look at the list of the number of things that we have, it's a lot for our little staff to have to take care of every weekend, all the time.
Of all the events we do, though, races like this are the most benign. Like I said, they start at a reasonable hour, they're over at a reasonable hour, in, out, cleaned up, they do it all themselves. Nice. This is a far cry from the Art and Wine Festival or Begonia. So, but just it's worth noting that we're being circumspect.
I think Tom's events are local enough that the majority of the people he draws are people from this area.
No,
physical fitness and given the opportunity for people who live here.
Absolutely, and I plan on voting for it, which is why I seconded it. But like I said, it's worth noting we have to tread very carefully.
Jacques, any comments?
I'm just going to add to Mike's sentiment. I think we love Tom, we love what you do in this town, and I think the reason the council is going to probably vote for this is because you are a local guy and we want to send the right message. I think when we did the event calendar last year, we did kind of send a collective message, and I support you on that, Stephanie, that we are full. What's good about this and why I'm willing to, to go along with one more event a year is it's an off-season event. It's a February event. It might be good. Sometimes the merchants say we don't bring enough stuff in. They are benign. Everything Mike said I agree with. I think it's just, I think what I would say, though, if I was sending a message, or you already said this, is we're full. We're full.
And staff thanks you for that support. Thank you.
And the chief recommends it, and that's another reason why I'm in favor of it.
So with that, we have a motion and a second, so all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Good luck, guys. Thank you. Takes us to our next item on the agenda. This is a review of an in-Lee parking fee program. Rich?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. By way of background, the City Council adopted or approved construction of a 233-space temporary parking lot in March of 2013. That project provided the city with 57 surplus spaces over the previously identified 176-space village parking deficit. Following that project, the council approved an administrative policy in October to use those surplus spaces to establish an in-lieu parking fee program. That distinguishes the 57 spaces from the greater pool of public parking, which we felt was important so that they didn't get lost with just the general public parking spaces, and that the Coastal Commission would consider them just sort of out there in public spaces. The administrative policy does restrict the use of that program to a large village hotel with valet service. No other use types can currently take advantage of that program. And then last October, you did direct us to bring this back to a future council meeting to discuss the program. The regulatory background of the program is consistent with our previous general plan and the current general plan, which both require new development in the village to provide parking outside the village, but within walking distance. The only exceptions are the Mercantile, the former Capitola Theater site, and non-historic residential uses. The draft zoning code update that we're currently working on would also propose to codify the City Council policy as it's written at that time. Just quickly, some of the details of the program. The parking area would be located in the upper Beach and Village parking lot due to some financing restrictions that were used to construct the lower lot. Any request to use the program would have to be approved by the City Council. The council, when they adopted the policy, did not specify the participation costs. It was determined that that would be determined at the time of an application, but it would be based on a prorated cost for the city to build a parking structure. The fee could, under the current policy, be a lump sum one-time payment or an annual assessment, and revenue collected would be required to be deposited into an exclusive parking trust fund. Applicants would be responsible for securing, monitoring, and enforcement of their purchased parking spaces. Since the program was established by the council, staff does receive inquiries from various village developers who are interested in developing bar restaurant uses, ground floor commercial, and street dining or parklets. The obstacle they always run into, though, is there is a lack of parking, and the program currently does not allow them to participate. The Traffic and Parking Committee, when they reviewed this back in 2013, they had concerns with allowing smaller projects to use the program that could incrementally consume spaces that have been set aside for a hotel. They did recommend reserving those spaces for a future hotel. And they also had concerns that the expanded program, selling off to smaller projects, could exacerbate village parking problems, thereby increasing neighborhood parking impacts. Some of the potential options the council could consider would be to retain the program without any modification. The council could modify the program to expand the types of uses that could participate. And then finally, you could, of course, just repeal the program and convert those to public spaces. That concludes my presentation, and staff's available for any questions. Thank you.
Questions? Dennis?
I have a question, Tony. The ordinance as is written right now only really applies to two properties. There's only two that could fulfill it: the Mercantile property and the Capitola Theater property. Is it legal for a jurisdiction to do that to the benefit of two property owners and allocate parking to those properties? How can we justify excluding anybody else from being able to use this it's public money and public parking?
Council member, I'd really think that I would need to do some research on that to respond to it. In general, it seems to me like a policy decision for the council to, I would assume that the parking spaces would be paid for at the time of the development of those hotels, so that it's not really a dedication of public funds for that purpose, but it's reserving those spaces to accommodate parking for specific projects. I could do further research and follow up.
I would like you to, if you could.
I'd be happy to do that.
John?
So I want to ask some general questions so I understand a little bit more about how some of this came about. I did listen to the recommendations of the Parking Commission, and, well, first of all, I think they've done a great service to the city for all the work they've done over the years, and it's not just this one issue, it's many issues. But I do like to understand a little bit about the 57 space inventory in the, so that was a recommendation of our commission, and what's sort of driving this is the Coastal Commission. So I'm wondering, how much leeway do we have here? Is this something that can be revisited? Did they ever come back to us and say, we give you the stamp of approval on this? Did they ever question us, how we got to that results? I'm trying to understand that because I don't know if this is a hard and fast number. So can you give me some guidance here, please?
So the city had commissioned a parking study for the village, I believe in 2008, and it identified that we had an existing parking deficit of 176 spaces. That was prior to the creation of a lower lot. Lower lot provided 233, and there's your delta of the 57 spaces that have been set aside for the in lieu parking fee program. In terms of the Coastal Commission, they haven't formally certified it. The council adopted a policy which does not require certification from the Coastal Commission. We did have conversations with one of their managers. She indicated that there was not really a problem with the concept, in her opinion. She did wonder how the details would be worked out once we exercise the program, how spaces would be monitored, enforced, secured, those types of things.
I would also add that I think one of the reasons why, because Coastal Commission initially suggested that it did require an LCP amendment to do this, but I think our staff position and the city's position was that our current LCP actually contemplates an in lieu fee program, both in the LCP and the implementation plan as well. And we pointed that out to Coastal staff, and they saw that. They did obviously indicate the reservations, but we did point out that the general plan already contemplated the existence of such a program.
Okay. So we might be able to look at this again. In a sense, we're being driven by something that we don't have an actual ruling on, and that's the problem I have.
I don't think that's the case. The city has the current administrative policy that we believe we could exercise. I think we had talked with the Coastal Commission before we did it, make sure that they're completely on board formally. And as I mentioned, we're with the zoning code update, we'll submit that with the provision that codifies the policy once we complete the zoning code update. So I don't think there's anything driving the program right now. It's in place. The council requested that we bring it forward for discussion, maybe with an interest of modifying it or just getting more information.
Okay. One other question, a couple more actually. So what does a property owner actually, or a business, a potential business owner go through when they want to establish a business, and, you know, how are they determining how many more seats they need, which require parking, and, you know, what is it from their standpoint? Because I have heard, you know, as you presented, a lot of different businesses have come here and they had to be turned away. So what is their experience?
The most common example that I could provide is we often get prospective tenants at the Mercantile come in who would like to convert retail space to restaurant or bar use. Restaurant and bar use has a higher parking requirement than a retail space. And because they can't meet that increased parking demand on site or anywhere else in the village, and there's not a program to purchase spaces with, they really have no solution and no path forward for that type of project. There's other examples. We've, you know, had inquiries about parklets, you know, displacing a village parking space and putting dining there. But again, there's no way to compensate for that loss of parking under today's current standards.
Okay. Since the 57 space inventory is actually within, you know, we know that that's excess in a sense, and we've set that aside. Is the city able to lease available parking spaces in one or the other of the lots?
As the program's written today, we could, but only for a large village hotel with valet parking service.
How about other than the 57 spaces?
No, those are all considered part of our public parking inventory.
Okay.
Michael?
I'll wait at the end.
No questions?
No, I'll wait till after public comment.
Okay. No questions. Okay. With that, we'll open it up to the public. Questions? Comments?
Well, good evening. My name's Nels Westman. I'm going to go over a little bit over my 3 minutes. I suspect there's not a long line of people to talk after me, so I appreciate your patience. And one thing that as I listened to your comments, two things popped into my mind. Number one, these so-called 57 spaces, they're like totally surplus. We don't need them. We can sell them to somebody. You know, I don't think that's the case. I think, particularly during the summer, every one of those spaces is used. And secondly, I think all of the calculations years ago, and Rich, you may be able to help me here, that identified exactly how many places, parking spaces we were short in the village, 100 and something, I don't really remember. I don't think they ever really factored in the village residents. I mean, there are I think almost 300 parking permits out there in circulation today, and those represent the cars of the people that live in the village that do not have off-street parking. So to say we don't need those 57 spaces is a pretty tortured rationale. But we were willing to torture it, A, because we were trying to hold the Coastal Commission at arm's length and keep a little tiny bit of our options open in the future before they completely run over us roughshod. Well, I've lost my train of thought, and I apologize. But the other thing is that let's say these spaces cost $30,000. What bar owner in Capitola is not going to fall over himself to say, $30,000, the city will finance it for 30 years like a mortgage, no cash down. Oh, this is a sweetheart deal. It's going to cost me $250 a month, and I can add 6 more tables to my restaurant. What bar owner is not going to say, where do I sign? So, you're opening Pandora's box. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to say I've been working on village parking issues for 35 years, 35 long years, and I'm also kind of an observer of how things get done in Capitola. So I may ruffle a few feathers tonight. I'm sorry, but here we go. I was, and honestly still am, a supporter of the concept of a quality village hotel on the site of the old theater with public and private partnership to build a parking structure and to get the hotel cars out of the village. And to do that requires a valet system. My dream would be that eventually an enlightened developer would come along who could figure out a way to put the theater property together with the Britannia Arms property, and we would get a quality oceanfront, not too tall hotel. And I think that that quality hotel would begin to move the typical village visitor profile away from the day tripper and towards the destination visitor who will patronize local retailers and restaurants. So say what you will, something is going to happen on those properties. And while I realize public support has eroded a bit for the hotel parking structure concept, how can you say that that's never going to happen? So let's use these spaces, these surplus spaces that nobody needs for something else. The whole concept behind creating the In Lieu program was a long-term city policy to effectively reserve 57 spaces in a parking structure for a public-private partnership that would yield major direct and indirect benefits to the city and to its citizens. And in the meantime, until that happens, all of those 57 spaces are available for all village users and for all village merchants, not just a privileged wealthy few. So safeguards were put into place to guard against trend of creating loopholes in the development rules so that well-financed developers could capitalize on these loopholes by buying parking spaces a la carte. In lieu spaces will only work if the customers of the new development actually park in them instead of just joining the already fierce competition for the ever-shrinking supply of village parking spaces. And the only effective way to accomplish that is some sort of a valet service, and only a larger project could actually afford to operate such a system. Your bringing the In Lieu program back for review makes me worry that these safeguards are about to be gutted in favor of creating more loopholes, which would effectively lead to the piecemeal sell-off of these 57 spaces to allow onesie-twosie developers to max out their buildings. This new development would simply exacerbate the current dismal parking problem in the village. It is short-term, and it will only make a bad situation worse. The only businesses that seem to make money in the village are bars and restaurants, which we already have many of. If you allow the piecemeal sell-off of the in lieu spaces for small developments, these will likely result in more bars and restaurants. Frankly, I worry our village will become little more than a giant food court with a view. So I urge you to stay the long term in your vision and your commitment, and don't gut the in lieu policy that we have now. But should you decide to start gutting it, then I encourage you bring your proposal, put your proposals through a full public hearing process before the Planning Commission and yourselves, because it will inevitably result in more intense development in the village, more congestion, and more parking shortages. And one last little point. Sorry, thanks for your patience. You know, I had the opportunity to review the packet for the Planning Commission at their last meeting. I know a planning commissioner, and one item that was on there was a proposal to tear down that old building right across the street and replace it with commercial on the ground floor and 2 levels of residential above it, and to eliminate their off-street parking spaces. Well, clearly this is going to result in a massive 3-story high flat roof building that is going to overwhelm the residential uses immediately behind it. I mean, is this the sneak preview of what the neighborhood commercial development is going to be along Capitola Avenue and Capitola Road? I hope not, because it doesn't seem very neighborly. But I'm sure that the developer thinks it'll be a charming little project. It won't. And this, and a gutted in lieu program will make that project possible. And I don't think the public wants it or will stand for it. I just don't think it's smart management of our parking resources. Thanks. I'm sorry I went on so long.
Thanks for your comments, Nels. Carrie, this is the time to come up. Thanks for your patience.
Thanks for explaining the problem.
Welcome to Capitola, though.
Thank you very much. I feel very welcomed here. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Kari Sid, and I am a new owner of a business in Capitola, the Capitola Hotel. And don't worry, I am here to prevent that food court from going and having a view. My husband and children and I feel very blessed to be here, and we feel like this is a very special place, and I know that you know that as well. We did purchase a hotel, though, that doesn't have any parking, and I get two questions every single day, and every day that I have owned this hotel. Question number one is, do you have a room? And through the winter, I was able to say, yes, we do. Come on in. In the summer, I'm not sure I can say that. We're full every weekend right now through September. And while that's wonderful, I don't like to say no. We don't have a room. The second question I get every single day is, okay, now where do I park? Because my car is right out there, and here's my luggage, and I don't want to get a ticket, so where do I go? What do I do? And in the winter, it's been kind of okay to say, okay, find you a parking spot, but I know that's going away too. So I am very limited by what I can do. What I love is the idea of making this little boutique hotel something very special in our village. And I have a vision, and I see what it could be, and I get so excited. And one of the options is to maybe try and find a way to add rooms so I can say yes to that question, which is, do you have a room? Instead of sending them to Fairfield Inn, which is where they go, because they have a lot of rooms and a lot of parking. But I also want to be able to invest reasonably, and so my question and my request is a consideration of a little boutique hotel in the in-lieu parking program. We don't qualify, and even if I added rooms, we wouldn't qualify. And it leaves us a bit in a quandary, because my husband and kids and I, we would take everything we had and invest in Capitola, and we just want to make sure that that's worth it. So I really appreciate you considering my plight, and if there's anything I can do to participate and be a part of the process, call me, because I will. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kari. Anybody else from the public like to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close that and bring it back. Who would like to?
Sure.
Okay.
This community lived. These are two different problems that are in tension, and they should have to be separated. We lived with a 179 space deficit for many, many years. The world did not come to an end. Okay, cars were not parked on the sidewalk 3 deep. So let's get off the idea that if these spaces are used in that parking lot, the world will come to an end, because this is the first time since the Lower Pacific Cove was built that we had enough that we thought were enough. Totally different issue with someone adding 6 tables to their restaurant, which I have always contended does not significantly add to the parking demand in the village. If there are 6 more places for 12 more people to sit, there are people who are in the village already. They did not drive here, look for a parking space, and then went into, Mai Tai Beach Grill. They were here. So with regard to development or any kind of expansion in the village, that's a zoning code issue. We have long since needed to revise what we think the correct number of parking spaces are for all the businesses in the village, because it's very much wrong. Counting square footage and imagining how many spaces that relates to is foolish. I am not in favor of the in-lieu program, because I know what will happen. There will never be enough money in the in-lieu fund to build a parking structure in any way, shape, or form. And some councils sometime in the future will figure out a way to spend it. I saw it with a special fund with the extra meters. We put an extra 100 meters in and raised the rates and looked at all this money and did a calculation about 10 years ago, decided we could build a parking structure in 15 years because look at all the money we'll make, and the money just dumped into the general fund, didn't go anywhere. So, my recommendation is, hell of an idea. let's just roll along for a while. And let's take special care in our zoning code with regard to allowing, more business to take place in our village without dreaming up a reason to have parking spaces for it. That's it.
Well, I did have dinner the other night at Caruso's and did sit right next to some people I knew that were from Watsonville and did drive right into Capitola from Watsonville. So, there are people that are here already, but there's people that are coming here that are looking for a parking place. And I'm real sensitive to any loss of parking in the village at all. We've taken away parking over time and put in planters and different kinds of things. And it's a real problem for the people that live there. Of course, I think there's less that live there now because there are more vacation rentals than there used to be. But, as much as I'm leery of a hotel ever being built on the theater site, we did make have a plan to wait until that developer wanted to come and try to bring us something, and we would have those parking places available. So I think we need to stick to our word and follow that at least for a while and give him that opportunity. And I'm not going to hold my breath, but I think that's the fair thing to do. And at this point, to change direction on a developer or a potential developer, I don't think it's fair to them. We either need to say, we're thinking about it, so either get something in right away or, or not. But anyway, I don't think he's ready to do that right now. We have the whole zoning thing, which is going to take a long time to have that certified and so forth. So I don't think we need to do anything right now either, other than wait and see whether we can get it. Well, then he contacted us. Did he contact us because we were going to be talking about this tonight, or was that a coincidence?
To my knowledge,
Okay, so he's contacted us. He wants to make, contact with ET. So let's go there and see what we can get any kind of information. And if we're still in limbo, 6 months from now, we can always talk about it, again, or a year from now. But we're in no rush at all, to change this. I don't think right now. We do not have room for additional development in the village right now, at all. I don't think. I'd love to see it, but we don't have the room parking wise for it. I don't think right now. We don't have a clear direction from the Coastal Commission, so I think we're kind of where we are, and we just stay there for a while until we hear from this developer whether they're going to want those 57 spaces and use them or not. And if they're not, we'll move on.
I'd like to see Dennis in his comments first.
He would like to hear your comments first.
Okay, I'll do that. A hotel in the village has more than significant obstacles to ever get there. Number one is water. Present water condition, the chances of you getting water in that hotel in the next 15, 20 years probably is not good. Community acceptance of a major hotel in the village is a problem. By that time, you're dealing with the global warming issues. You're also dealing with the Coastal Commission in that size of visitor serving service. If a developer of that property decides that he needs the parking off-site, which is what we're offering here, is that he buys into a second-story parking garage, which we want him to do, regardless of whether those 57 spaces are there now, but at the time that he buys it, he's going to pay for it. That's the start of buying into our new parking garage. Right now, we have an opportunity for smaller businesses to be prosperous in the village. And that's economic vitality is extremely important on that level. And we've all talked that way. And so it's time to open the door and allow businesses with proper zoning and a proper administration for businesses to succeed. Caruso's, the possibility of that back. There's a number of them in the village right now that would love to find a way to make their business successful. And anyone who's at a Caruso's restaurant or Thai Basil, you'll find that experience. And that's an experience there where the city turned down a business from actually expanding because of the fact that it could not get parking. We want to make the village successful. It's not going to add any more parking than is required there. The 57 spaces in our mind already exist. What we're doing is we can collect money, or $3,500 or whatever it is, back into the bank that goes strictly to a fund for our in-loop parking program, and start now. It's not going to, if a hotel ever does come around, it's not going to stop it when those allocations there. The other thing, I think there's a real legal question whether we can benefit two property owners with public money and public things and not benefit everybody. There's no precedent in doing that. In-lieu fees are done in almost every major city in this country. Yeah. It's not uncommon. The village needs vitality, and it needs new. Can anyone tell me how many new buildings or businesses we've seen in the village in the last 10, 15 years? Maybe 3 buildings have improved, and a couple of them are because of fire. So, giving property owners and businesses the opportunity to succeed is something we need to do, and one way we can do it is to offer them the opportunity to buy out their parking. I think that's all I really have to say about that. What is wrong with making the village successful? It doesn't need to have to wait for a hotel for 15 to 20 years to do that. It can do that now. Thank you.
John.
So I had a very kind invitation from a certain member of the public that recently spoke, and I went to his house and learned about in-lieu. You know, I actually see the wisdom of setting aside parking for a hotel, something large. Okay, it's almost the same issue that communities that have revenue that go up and down deal with in terms of funds to prepare for time when things are lean. So when the funds are out there and we have flush money, we're going to spend it on everything. The analogy is that we have 57 spaces right now, but no one apparently building a hotel that, you know, we set these spaces aside for. So let's use them for something. But the city recognizes the necessity for parking for businesses to be viable, and improving parking options, by all accounts, should help our businesses be more successful. An example we just heard from a new business owner here is parking permits for hotels. So, you know, we sell a permit so their guests can park, and it may be on the street, it may be up in our parking lot, but we recognize the fact that those guests need a place to park. The reason why I asked some questions, Rich, is because I'm trying to understand how we assign parking, and I think Nels brought up a really good point that we haven't looked at the complete problem, you know, when it was first looked at. And so if we're ignoring residences here, people that live here who do need parking, and we didn't put that in the calculation, I'm wondering about this whole number, which actually might make it worse. I completely agree with Dennis. I would like to see this council do more to make this city more exciting and viable for our businesses here, and for the businesses and for the residences in particular that want to have more to come as options, whether it's a restaurant or whatever it is, and our visitors too. I completely agree with that. But then I'm listening to Mike, and is this a number game that because, you know, we haven't looked at our zoning carefully enough? I'm glad you brought that up. And this is the time when we are looking at zoning, so it's very appropriate. I don't know what standards we have been following to restrict the options for our businesses in terms of parking. Are these things that we should revisit? And I think you're suggesting that, and I think we should. I keep hearing about examples. Thai Basil is one of them. I heard about someone that wanted to do a beer pub, a brewery in the Mercantile. God, I'd love something like that. They're opening up all over the place. What a way to get new people and enjoy our downtown, you know, but we don't have enough parking. So, quite frankly, I did not spend, like Nels did, 35 years working on parking in Capitola. but it seems like we need to do a lot more work. So I completely support Mike in his mention that zoning has to be looked at. I would like this to be done sooner than later because I do want to have our businesses in town have the opportunity, as this lady and her husband and her family's moved in, to invest in this city. Their investments need to have our partnership to supply parking so that it can be successful. So that's in the process right now. So actually, I agree with Stephanie. I'd like to hold for a while and let this process play out, looking at our zoning. When I think about this, though, if we do find that we're going to look at zoning a little bit different in terms of parking, I'd like to look at this as that putting parking in a bank that we could use for businesses that need it, so that in Capitola, downtown Capitola, we could actually provide some solutions for them when they want to expand their business. Thank you.
Rebuttal.
You know, we have had an in lieu fee in the past, many years ago, and in the village, and people did ask where did it go because it kind of disappeared. But, you know, I mean, we all want the businesses to be successful, and, you know, I got to tell you, we've had this discussion here probably a dozen times over the years. This is nothing new. We kind of are like a cat chasing its tail, and we kind of need to kind of recognize that and kind of deal with reality. And Caruso's is very successful. You know, it could be more successful, I'm sure, if it was larger. Totally packed when I was in there. The bars and restaurants are doing well. The other shops, a lot of them are not doing well. It's merchandising, folks. You know, it's what we have down there. And, you know, more parking will help some people, but it's a question of the business mix in the village. And once people are down there, I think they'll spend money if there's stuff that they want to spend money on. And so the businesses that aren't successful they really seriously need to look at their business plan. And I'll never forget when that was mentioned one day in these chambers, someone walked out that door and slammed that door, and I thought the glass was going to break. But, you know, when you have, you know, Balzac Bistro that's closed for 4 years, and you have the Mercantile that's half empty, and you have other stores that don't care who they rent to, and the tenants come and go, and, you know, it's not a strong business community. It's a tourist beach community, and I wish it was different. And I wish we could do something different there and really have really wonderful shops and businesses where people were making money and they were happy and everything was great. But with the mix of landlords and everything else that we have there in businesses, it's tough. So we can't just talk about parking's going to solve people's problems, because that's not going to happen. You know, some additional parking will help some people's business sometimes, maybe, but it's not a panacea. And, you know, we can talk about, you know, well, if you sell a few to that business, that'll help them. You don't know. You know, it's the whole village business picture, which is very complicated. And, you know, maybe we'd love to get into it sometime. We'll see if there's something we can help, because I think the city does have a role to play in trying to do some economic development down there. And I know, you know, just personally, you know, I had called the landlord at Balzac Bistro and said, please rent to someone, good. You know, and they'll say, we'll do it when we're ready. They're tough to deal with. And, you know, so, but the city could be a little more engaged, maybe, you know, individually with some landlords to get them to, you know, upgrade. But the people that are successful are the people that have a wonderful business plan. Yvonne started out small, and she was successful, and she moved into the business on that side. Then she was really successful, and so she moved into, maybe there was a kite shop down there, and she moved into that side, a kite shop in Capitola. And, you know, the successful businesses have good business plans, and it's not necessarily are all around parking. So I'd love to help do anything to, you know, to help people down there be successful, but they've got to have good food, good marketing, good business plan, and good quality merchandise that people want to buy. So that's I think, you know, hopefully we're getting better. We're getting there.
You have a quick comment, or go ahead. Go ahead.
You know, I stopped thinking about what I was going to say when you said you want to speak.
No, I just didn't know if we were going to go back and forth, but go ahead.
I am really curious about the legality of saving parking for certain businesses. To me, parking is, it's our power to provide parking. We have to spend public monies to provide it, and it's for the public good. And so I'd like to explore the concept, and that's why I said, but if we do find out we have extra parking available, because we look at parking a little bit differently. So Tony, this is actually to you. If we come up with something that says, because we've changed our zoning, and now we have, voila, an extra 30 parking spaces, can we assign those to fill certain needs, or do we have any ability to deal with that as, to basically, if we on a policy level want to help certain businesses expand or to bring in new businesses or something like that, can we keep those aside and assign them as needed?
Well, again, I'm assuming that the spaces are what's being reserved. It's not dedication of public money toward that. Presumably, as part of a parking program, the developer would pay for the spaces or pay the in lieu fee, so that it's the city council dedicating a public facility for the benefit of a private business. Presumably, in so doing, the council is also making a policy determination that the overall public benefit of having that business, such as a hotel business, in a particular location, serves a valid public purpose.
That's in lieu. Okay, that's the first question.
I don't see a
legal
impediment, because when you make a land use decision of any sort, you are in essence conferring benefit on private property or on a private individual.
On that private property.
Presumably, in so doing, you're also making a finding that the proposed use or the proposed activity is overall for the public benefit or will enhance the public health and safety or public welfare. So, I don't see that as a real legal impediment. Certainly, it's a policy decision for the city council, and you could make a determination that reserving those spaces for a particular business or for a particular location to benefit from is not a good idea. I don't think there's particularly any legal constraint in doing so.
Okay.
Well, I think there's been a lot of great comments. They've been all over the place. I started in this process in the city on the parking commission, and at that time we were short. I was here in the day of short 167 spaces, and the lower Pack Cove parking lot solved that problem. I believe every part of me, my bones, believes that we solved that problem by creating 233 places. And I want to amend the number just because I like round numbers, because since Steve decided to tear out my bathroom in the lower Pack Cove, I believe there could be 3 more additional parking places that would miraculously occur, which means we potentially have 60 extra spaces. And extra is just a term over the number now. It's not like they're extra. There is no extra. They're not in air. But I would tend to believe there's 60 spaces. And I think that when we adopted the policy to put the spaces aside, we were optimistic. We were hopeful. We were pretty much begging that we would we wanted to entice a large-scale hotel to come and build there, and that was our intent. And while waiting and hoping and wishing for that hotel to come here, I agree with Dennis. I think what we've done is we've handcuffed the businesses in the village. We have prevented them from excelling. I hate to say it, I used to go to Cruz's all the time, and Davide no longer is here because he couldn't put more than 12 people in the restaurant, and you can't make your business 2 nights a week having 12 people. If you've got a good product, which Yvonne did, she has a big store, but her parking's not the same. Davide couldn't put 25 people in there. He's gone. I know, Dennis, you were a big fan of the parklets. I think you were lobbying for those for a while. I don't know if they're good or bad, but, to try something like that, that would be something that would be allowed in this program. I think what we've done is we've set our goals, we've set our sights for this hotel. It may come based on some recent things. Maybe that's going to happen. whether they want all those places, whether they're going to pay for those places, I don't know that anybody's ever going to pay for a 3-story parking structure. I think the cost is pretty much prohibitive in our current time. Holding those places was good. I'm personally of a point where I could see with parting with some of those to enhance something. For me, what I'm trying to get into the village is not more bars. I want overnight patrons, okay? I've got someone in the audience that has a hotel. Her fault is it's not a 40-unit hotel, but it is a hotel that brings overnight patrons. Doing something to accommodate a business like that is, I think, what the intention of those parking places was meant for, not to just hold them at bay forever and ever in eternity. And there could be other things that could qualify for those spaces, which is why I would love to see somebody on the council make a motion to kick this back to staff, to kick it to the Planning Commission, and to possibly have them come up with a program that had public input that would say, what can we do to release some of these spaces and enhance the type of businesses that will benefit the city?
But then what are you going to do if Mr. Swenson comes in 2 months with a proposal, with a conceptual proposal, and says, you guys passed this policy, administrative policy, and, I'm working on it.
There's no guarantee that any builder is going to ever build on that theater parking lot. As Dennis said, I'm more pessimistic about someone in this town approving that process for a building on that site. And what we need to do is take the handcuffs off the people that are here right now today that are trying to make the village a better place. If there's a restaurant that needs some capacity, if there's a hotel that doesn't meet the number, some arbitrary number that we came up with.
They've already got their use permit, though.
And what I'd like to do is just obviously we are all over the place on this one. I can sense that, and I wouldn't even know what a vote would be. But what I'm asking or saying is the right direction to go is for this to go to the Planning Commission to come up with a process. Go to staff, have staff come up with a policy, send it to the Planning Commission, have them weigh in on it. And in that process, maybe something will come out of this proposed hotel builder in the myth. Because definitely it's a myth.
Well, that's why I say let's wait until we're all going to be meeting with him pretty soon. Let's wait a month and see what he says.
I can't make a motion, but I would love to support a motion that would send this to the.
I would like to make a motion.
Is there I'm done speaking.
Okay.
But we don't even know what we're doing until we talk to him. Why don't we give him a chance? We're all going to be meeting with him. He just emailed us.
Stephanie, we've been waiting for years for this, and believe me, you have a water department and board that's not going to give them their water permits. You can't build a hotel without water, and you're not going to see those permits for 10, 15 years.
Is there a motion coming
They're
in this?
issuing will serve letters all the time.
Not for multiple units, they're not. They're for single family there. Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we direct staff to work up a preliminary program to allow for the use of in lieu fees for the use of any property that is in the CV zoning that is commercial. And that we direct staff to take this first to the Planning Commission with a public hearing, and that one of the conditions be that all in lieu fees goes to a restricted fund only for parking improvements for the village. That's my motion.
Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any just more discussion on the topic?
I'm reluctant to put this kind of task on staff right now. There are so many other things going on between the zoning update, the CIP projects. There's a lot on our plate right now. I'd be more apt to go with this after, and all of us are going to be meeting with the developer for the hotel because they put the call out. I'd like to wait a month and see really how close they think they are. Because if they're still looking at 2, 3, 5 years away, I'm all about it. Swenson has hundreds of water offsets in his pocket right now. Water's not his issue. I don't know what his issue is. I won't speak to it.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
But we're all going to know a lot more about the hotel in the next 3 weeks. I think I'd feel better about voting for something like this after that, just to get an idea. And between you and I, those 57 spaces are not going to be enough spaces for that hotel.
No.
Period. That hotel is going to take the second deck because 57 is not going to cut it.
Any other comments? Liz, can you do a roll call vote?
Council members Norton,
Aye.
Arlen.
No.
Bertrand.
No.
Termini.
No.
And Mayor Bottorff.
Yes. Motion fails 3-2 with, motion passes 3-2 with Norton and Bottorff dissenting. I'm sorry, motion fails 3-2 with Bottorff and Norton dissenting.
Remember, anyone who was on the winning end of that vote can bring it back for reconsideration.
I think this has to come back, okay? And Mike's comments were really dealing with timing and respect for staff and how much they have on their plate right now. Zoning was just brought up. That could adjust our sense of what our parking demands are. But
we can bring it back. Anyone on the council can put it on the agenda to bring it back at a later time.
And that very motion, which is a perfect motion, again, can be reconsidered in a meeting or two by anyone who voted no on that particular issue.
Right.
It's that easy.
That's fine.
I'm particularly interested that we all of a sudden get a call.
That's exactly what it, he got word of this thing, that's why he called.
We're going to move on to item C, which is authorize further expenditure for engineering staff augmentation in the Public Works Department. Presentation by the Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, once again. Item before you is to continue our efforts of staff augmentation and getting the capital improvement program off and running. We've had very good success with recent staff augmentation using a variety of staff at Kimley Horn and Associates, asking to continue that for probably the next year at $100,000. That money is available within the capital improvement program. Having Kimley Horn available to just work on a variety of projects rather than specific projects, certainly you're seeing the results of that now with Stockton Avenue, the Vice Drain, 38th Avenue. Those projects, really, they were a great assistance in me getting those projects out to bid and on the street. So I'd like to continue those efforts and ask for you to allocate some money that we have in the Clare Street project between now and the end of the year, end of fiscal year, when we will replenish those funds and make some decisions on the Clare Street project at that time.
Any questions? Okay. Anybody from the public have any questions or concerns? Comments? We'll bring it back.
Move approval of the authorization, to authorize the expenditure.
Second. Any staff discussion or council discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Keep up the good work, Steve. Thank you. Okay, it takes us to item D, zoning code update progress report.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Just to give the council a brief update on the zoning code update and our status and progress. February 4th, as you recall, we did release the draft zoning code update to the public. The code remains available on the city's website, City Hall, as well as the Capitola Branch Library. We kicked off the review on March 3rd with the Planning Commission. Initially, staff proposed a 3 to 4 hearing schedule whereby we would kind of focus on sort of topical policy changes throughout the code. The Planning Commission talked about it. They preferred to have a more thorough review, kind of go through the code a little more methodically for the benefit of the public. So currently we're going through it chapter by chapter, reviewing each section to make sure that we have it right and to the Planning Commission's liking. March 17th, we had our second meeting. We reviewed the zoning map and completed the review of the residential and mixed-use zone chapters, and we will resume those zoning discussions on April 18th and April 21st, right in this room at 6 p.m. Concurrently, we have been working with some of the other city committees. We presented to the Traffic and Parking Committee March 16th. Last night, we also presented the environmental chapter to the Commission on the Environment. Meanwhile, we have had some discussions with California Coastal Commission. They have had a kind of a pre-draft copy of our code for a while. They're starting to send in some comments. We received some feedback on our coastal zone chapter and geologic hazard chapters. We're actively meeting and talking with them on some issues, and the Coastal Commission staff has offered to give a presentation of the Planning Commission at a future date. We warmly accepted that offer, and we'll be working with them to schedule that presentation probably later this spring. So looking forward, my best guess at this stage is the Planning Commission will require another 6 to 8 hearings, ranging from April through the summer, probably ending sometime late June into July. If the Planning Commission does complete the review on that schedule, the Council will have up to 7 regular hearing dates between the end of the Planning Commission review and the close of the calendar year. I would note that 5 of those would occur before the November election. So some of the options, and I'd like to hear some of your thoughts tonight, is how you would like to do your review once the Planning Commission is done with their work. One option would be that the Council takes a little bit of a higher level topical review of some of the substantial policy issues, some of the things that the Planning Commission may have struggled with a little bit. Another option would be to begin those City Council meetings sooner than later, so that there would be concurrent Council Planning Commission reviews. Under that scenario, the Planning Commission, once they get through a few chapters, we could present those to you and go over that material once they're finished. It's possible that we could end up adopting the zoning code after 2017 if we were to take an approach where the Planning Commission and the City Council did the reviews in more of a linear fashion. And then finally, the other option would be for the City Council to hold additional special meetings in the fall to compress the Council adoption timelines. So just some things to think about. I don't necessarily need direction tonight, but certainly in the near future will help us with scheduling. An update on our budget. The original DC&E, now named PlaceWorks contract, is almost out of funds. We got $8,800 remaining. The good news, as you're well aware, we got the general plan completed, the climate action plan, the zoning code is well on its way, and the EIR for the whole project is done. So the bulk of that work is behind us, but with the additional work that we have ahead of us with the meetings and revisions to the code, we are going to negotiate a contract with Ben Noble. He's been involved throughout the process. He's now on his own. He no longer works with PlaceWorks. Good news is it results in us being able to use him at a significantly reduced rate without the big company overhead. So that concludes my status report, and staff's available for any questions. Thank you.
Stephanie, go ahead.
Why did they change the zoning names? Why don't they just keep them the same? It totally confuses everybody to have to learn new names for things in a city or a county.
You know, we've had some of that discussion with the Planning Commission. There's nothing magical with the names. We've tried to use more modern naming conventions with the zoning code, what you'd find in neighboring jurisdictions. But certainly that's something that we could keep the same in a lot of cases. That's certainly something.
Just in a small town, when you start calling, you've been called something forever, that name and that, you got to learn the names. We can do that, but why?
One of the things, when we first had the draft code as staff, we chose to keep the R1 designation because it was so ingrained locally. The Planning Commission, though, thought differently. They thought that changing to a residential single-family designation was more intuitive. The one wasn't necessarily what you would think of as one single family. You could have a second unit on it. So they preferred to change that naming convention. But again, it's something from staff's perspective, we could go either way.
I just wanted the council to know. I know that the Planning Commission had talked about that. In case we find it too obscure, we could recommend that we change the names back to what we've been using.
Question, Dennis?
Rich, what's the status on the general plan approval from Coastal Commission?
The Coastal Commission has not approved the general plan. General plan is done. We When you adopted it, that was the final action taken.
We didn't require coastal commission?
No, we sent it to them for public review. They offered some comments, but they don't have certification authority over the general plan.
What about with the zoning ordinance? Is that going to require their approval?
The zoning code serves as part of our implementation plan of the LCP, so it does require their certification, and we expect that there's going to be a lot of negotiating, and it's going to take some time to get that through their process.
In that process, it took us a year and a half to get a response from the Coastal Commission on the general plan. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe that is correct. We sent it to them for review, and I don't know if they reviewed it right away, but I don't know if they have a significant interest since they don't take jurisdiction over it.
Do you know how much time that was? I'm trying to feel out if we're talking 2017 for approval of the zoning ordinance, are we talking another year before we have the Coastal Commission review this and actually work it out?
Once the City Council were to adopt it, we would put a package together to submit to the Coastal Commission. My guess is that timeline would range anywhere from 6 months to 2 years.
Okay.
Probably somewhere in the middle.
I think by statute, the Coastal Commission has to take some sort of action within 12 months?
I think it's within 6 months, but then they have provisions to extend.
Yeah, and you've seen that before where they'll come back and they'll send us language that they want us to adopt. We have to consider it. There can be a bit of a back and forth. So it'll probably be an involved process.
Okay. I'm a little taken back by the fact that we're going to do 6 to 8 more meetings. And I don't know why it needs to do that. I mean, certainly, we approved the general plan on this council probably in 2 meetings. It was as intense a document, maybe not quite as intense a document. Planning Commission did almost the same, and all of a sudden we're seeing extended budget and a extended amount of time to go through the process. I kind of like your idea that you suggested that we do some things simultaneously. If we don't, I think it would be good for us to have a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and City Council right now. Because the Planning Commission needs to know how this council feels, and this council needs to hear how the Planning Commission feels on this. The final say comes to this council, not the Planning Commission. And so it would be good to have those exchanges in advance, or doing joint section by section. In other words, go Planning Commission for our approval of sections, then come to us, and the City Council does. And so we're not just smothered with the full document at the end to go over.
And that's a really good point, and that's why I suggested in my letter when I brought up the issue of the notification boundary, that it'd be really good to have a meeting with the Planning Commission, because they have to deal with this all the time. So I'd like to know what they want to do as far as notification, and decide what we want to do, and have it be the same thing, that we talk with them about that. And so that whatever we think, it's a decision that we make together. And then there's so many things like that we need to discuss together, I think.
John?
The idea that came up at the last Plan Commission meeting to separate out the village and the rest of the city in terms of, how's that being executed?
That's a pretty easy change. What Councilman Bertrand is referring to is on the draft code right now, groups the similar zoning classifications together. So, for instance, the residential zoning districts are in one chapter, single-family and your multifamily residential. The mixed use, there's 2. There's a village mixed use and a neighborhood mixed use. It's in one chapter. The Planning Commission preferred those to have a little more distinction and direct us to put them in subchapters. So we'll just simply put them apart, and they'll each have their own headings.
So it doesn't necessitate a separate view or review?
No, I mean, there's going to be a little bit of reformatting and moving some information around, but it's not going to be a major work effort to do that.
Okay.
Mike, questions? No questions. Anybody from the public like to weigh in on this?
I might say that, I've talked to my appointment to the Planning Commission, and I think that the Planning Commission is being diligent, careful, meticulous, and that's what we look to them for. So we can be sweeping. I like the fact they're going through it very carefully.
I'm going to close the public, bring it back for discussion. So now that would be appropriate there to.
I discussed it already.
That was your discussion.
Well, that was a good point about the timeline too, and that's another reason why I'd like to discuss the issue of notification sooner rather than later, because we don't want to wait until this whole process is finished to change that process. We want to change it now or sooner, in the next few months or three months or something, so we don't disadvantage other other neighbors about the applicants and their applications in their neighborhood. So it may take a long time. So if there's anything else that we do want to act on sooner in this area, we should look at that, look at those things.
Mr. Mayor, there are a couple of points I'd like to make. Number one is I would reiterate the point that Councilmember Termini had. I think that speaking with your planning commissioners at this stage is a really good idea to make sure you and your planning commissioners are aligned and you're up to speed on how the review is going. The second thing is that Councilmember Harlan did suggest sort of moving a particular element of the zoning code forward. It would be a challenge, I think, to do that in the context of the overall zoning code at the same time. This was related to how we notice the conceptual reviews, and planning staff, we get usually maybe one or two of those in a year, and we will notice it pursuant to our other noticing provisions moving forward if you were to choose to not try to address this ahead of the rest of the code.
Can we call it an administrative policy or something else so we don't have to get into that? I mean, make it something, it's easy. Some other, just an informal policy that we have now that we're going to notify the neighbors instead of 300 or 400 feet or 500, another 100 feet or whatever our policies, we can just implement it. We don't have to go through a whole bunch of regulations and submit that and codify it, do we? We can just do it in practice.
I think that's right. It's an internal procedure. One thing that's nice about having a small department, we all kind of know what's going on. So next conceptual review that hits our desk, we'll make sure it's noted.
Yeah, I don't want you to have to go to any trouble at all. Just change the area, change the number of feet.
Dennis, comment?
Yeah, just a question, Rich. What do you think of the idea of actually breaking this whole process into maybe two or three segments, where you could actually review a section by the Planning Commission, come to the council, and then getting certain segments out of the way as we go, other than going all the way through the Planning Commission and then sending the whole package to us for review?
So we did toss that out as one of the options, and I think that that's probably a pretty logical way to proceed, given the potential, that we're getting up to an election season and seeing us, bleed across. I'm not sure how that would play out, but I do want to be a little bit defensive of our planning staff because they're going to have a lot of meetings coming up here, and so the prospect of gearing up for a planning commission meeting and special planning commission meeting coming to the council the next week, we'll do our best, and we did put that option out there, but I think we all need to be cognizant of the fact that it's a small department and there's just a couple people there, and I just don't want to burn them out.
Well, that's why we should have joint meetings. That's why we should have joint meetings. Instead of two separate meetings, we'll meet together and talk about the same things and move on.
Comments?
Go ahead. I went to, so I'm relatively new. I'm the newest guy here. And I haven't been on a planning commission, and also I'm the backup person on multiple commissions, so I'm still learning. And that's why I went to the planning commission, and I've gone to 2 meetings now. One I couldn't attend the whole meeting, but the last one I did attend the whole meeting, and I learned a lot. And I have talked to my representative a little bit, but I can't possibly talk to him about all the detail that came up in the discussion. And so that's why I went to the meeting. So I don't think any of you guys are going to go because you've been through this before, so you have a better concept of what to expect. So I'm going because I want to educate myself. And so when it does come to our body, I'll be better prepared, I think. I see that you want to get it through, and I completely agree with that, because if applications are being made and we're contemplating changes in how we want to deal with that, that's really critical. So the idea of taking a segment out and passing it forward, or maybe some list of some way of notifying us of some of the major changes that have been made. I don't know what would make it. So I completely agree. If this could go a little bit faster just because of that issue. Yeah.
I'd like to see a way that we could expedite the process. I know when we did this the first time, it seems like there were some items we were in total agreement in, and we were able to lump those in. And then the ones that were, items that were obviously going to take a lot of discussion, we were able to just bring those aside. And maybe there's a way where we could do, the concurrent type meetings where the Planning Commission does some of the stuff that's not so controversial, and we go through that, and then possibly Stephanie's idea, if we come to the controversial items, we just have a joint meeting. And rather than waste a lot of time on duplicate controversy, we deal with those difficult items right here, and we end up making a decision that lasts. So something like that seems, but I think expediting the process would be better for all of us involved, financially and realistically.
I'm not worried about expediting the process and all. This stuff is very complicated, and it's very, very, very important. So however long it takes us to go through these things and get it right, that's what the public wants. These are all going to change all of our rules and regulations, possibly, for the future. And so we want to make sure that it's really reflective of where we are and where we want to be in the future and where our citizens want to go.
I'd like to echo that, and Mike led off on that too. I mean, there was so much detailed discussion, and the thing that got to me was a little change here changes so much in how things are going to appear on our streets and in this town. And so I think that discussion really is very important. But if there's some way you could speed up certain issues or certain segments, it might behoove it from your staff standpoint too, so we don't have to do this big, huge wrap-up at the end. But, I think you might have been already thinking about it, so maybe you'll come up with something for us.
Did you need a motion from us, or are you just looking for input, or?
No, I don't need any formal motion.
Okay.
Just looking for some input, wanted to give you an update.
Okay.
You didn't look confused at all.
Okay. Any other comments on the zoning item? With that, we'll bring this meeting to an adjournment, and good night, Capitola.